Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I cordially greet all the three panel speakers. Two of them are connecting remotely to our panel. Jürgen Rieg from the European Commission and Ralf Ohlhausen from ETPPA. And we have on spot right here beside me Jerzy Mroczek from BLIK. And well, as we all know, BLIK is really doing very well on the Polish market and is already making some inroads abroad. Yesterday it was awarded EDUCAT for the greatest impact on the cashless market, payments market here in Poland.
Dzień dobry. Good afternoon.
And with Jürgen and Ralf, we know each other from the PSMEG group, Payment Systems Market Expert Group, which is a kind of group of experts who advise the European Commission in the area of payments on policy initiatives as well as legislation. Now we are working on the PSD2 review, but between 2013 and 2015 we were working on the PSD2. So Jürgen is in charge at DG FISMA for the PSD2 review. Ralf is really not only the chair of the European Third Party Providers Association, but he's taking part in works of numerous groups at the ECB, API Berlin standards, advising those TPPs who are doing open banking. So the composition of this panel has been really well thought over, and I hope we'll have a fruitful discussion. So we are going to talk in particular about the upcoming PSD2 revision. This is already the seventh year since it was adopted, but the third year since it is fully operational, when the RTS on SCA and secure common and secure communication standard between TPPs and ASPSPs was brought into life. I'd like to say that we will, of course, focus on the PSD2 review, but this is not an isolated topic, so we will refer especially to the retail payments strategy, open finance framework, GDPR, and with regard to the retail payments strategy, there is a flagship initiative within it. It has instant payments. So we will talk about instant payments as well. And we will follow those discussion points from the agenda. So I think we can start. Gentlemen, are you ready? Okay, so let's start.
Yes, I am.
Great. So the first question will go to Jürgen. Could you please tell us where are we in the PSD2 review? So you as a representative of the European Commission. Jürgen, we can't hear you. Are you on mute? Perhaps, please check. No, unfortunately, we need to solve this technical issue. Hopefully we will be able to hear you. No.
But can you hear us, Jürgen?
I think, yeah. And Ralf, can you say something so we are sure that we can hear you?
I can hear you, and if you can hear me, it should work.
All right. So Jürgen, aren't you on mute? Well, can I ask the technical support to solve this problem? So, it would be dobrze by było, szanowni państwo, zacząć od tego punktu. but let's see if it is possible. Jürgen? Oh, great. So we can hear you. So please go ahead. The question is about where we are in the PSD2 review. Please, could you tell us? Jürgen, can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, but are you able to hear us?
Yes, I can, all the time.
Okay, so could you elaborate? Could you explain us what is the where we are in the PSD2 review process?
Okay, yes, thanks, Jakub. First of all, I want to thank you for the kind invitation and the kind words at the beginning of this panel discussion. And I'm happy to be here and give you a brief update on the PSD2 review and on the state of play. Here in DG FISMA, me and my colleagues are working on this project. We have kickstarted this towards the end of last year. We are still in the, let's say, fact-finding phase where we gather evidence via various fact-finding tools. I will briefly say a few words on this. Main tool is to conduct an external study. We have done a tender and an external contractor is reaching out to various stakeholders and do this assessment. We have also called the EBA to give us an advice on how to proceed best with the current rules, more from a supervisory authority's perspective. And what we've done only recently is to launch a public consultation. You might have seen this on our web pages. We have done a call for evidence and have you say consultation, but also a more targeted one. And I kindly invite you all participants in this conference to contribute to this public consultation, to have your say, so to say, on the PSD2 review. It is conceptioned as backward-looking, but also a forward-looking. So we are looking into what worked not, and we are also doing a bit of a forward-looking thing. So what might be possible changes in future to make this piece of legislation ready and future-proofed. On substance, there are various issues on the table which we have discussed in our various forums. Jakub, you mentioned the PSMEG, the expert group, where we have discussions on the issue, but also with various other stakeholders. And there are some things on the table. I think we need to have a look into the scope of this directive, whether it's still addressing the main actors in the payment market, as there are evolutions in the past years. But we will also have a look into the fraud prevention and strong customer authentication issue, which was, let's say, quite challenging to implement in the market. And let's see how it works and whether there are adjustments needed. And also a third issue is the access to payment accounts, and in particular the open banking provisions, whether they are fine. I think you mentioned a few things, standardization, other issues are on the table that we will have a look into it. But as said before, we are currently in the fact-finding phase to be informed about what happened outside there in the market. This is progressing, this work, with a view till this year's summer break. We hope that we will gather all the necessary information to decide on the best way forward for the second half of this year and also for the first half of next year. So in a nutshell, we are currently looking into the market. We invite you really to participate in our fact-finding gathering, in our public consultation. And at this stage, it's quite a bit early to draw a definite conclusion. So this is based on the evidence that we gather in the next weeks and months. And we will, I'm sure that we will find a good way how to proceed with this in the second half of this year and the first half of next year. So that's from my side as an opening remark. Many thanks, Jakub.
Great, thank you, Jürgen. So we all know that this that the Commission is doing the fact-finding exercise. So I really encourage you all to have your say. We have those public consultations open, not only the public to the wide audience, but also the targeted one, and it is available on the websites of the European Commission. But with regard to the substance, I would now like to move to Jerzy, and from the perspective of BLIK, the Polish mobile payment system, Jerzy, what needs to be improved and updated in the PSD2? Perhaps this scope of payment services. We all know that the BLIK is now considering launching a product for buy now, pay later, which is really hot. So, for instance, is it a good idea to include such a new payment service? So, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jakub. In the beginning, I would like to explain that BLIK is, as a company, is not a payment services provider. We are an operator of payment scheme and payment system. So we connect acquirers on one side and issuers on the other side. But therefore, we are at the center of payment chain. We therefore can assess PSD2 objectively due to our position. And I can say that our assessment is positive, especially in regard of increasing security of customers, because security is the fundamental issue for payments at all. Two-factor authentication is a great step in a right direction. And for the moment, it seems that the scope of services is sufficiently well covered in PSD2. However, I would like to highlight some areas for completion. I said that PSD2 does not concern us directly, but it contains some provisions that affect us. For example, the rule for access to payment systems on non-discriminating rules. But there are no regulations defining the rules of providing payment system services in other countries. This is one of the barriers to the development of payment schemes, payment sector in Europe. Some indications in this area we can find in the principles for financial markets infrastructure issued by BIS, but this document is addressed to central banks, and it is not direct legal basis for systems, operating systems, and there are no specific rules for such entities like us. And the European payments market would probably develop even more dynamically if the single passport rule for payment systems operator were introduced. There are also postulates, as Jakub said, to regulate deferred payments, because BNPL market is dynamically evolving. So it would be good to protect customers from falling to debt traps, and this regulation would be useful. However, I think that PSD is not appropriate, the appropriate place, the appropriate act to regulate this issue, because it concerns consumer credit. And if I could add anything else, I would like to point out that in recent years, we have come close to the point of over-regulation of the payments market. Perhaps we have even crossed this point. GDPR, AML, PSD1, PSD2, CSR at the horizon are acronyms for just some of the regulations which affects companies operating in the payments. As a lawyer, I should be delighted with these trends, because it makes our profession busy. I hear in my head voices of my colleagues, Jerzy, what are you talking about? Are you crazy? But I would say that legal perspective shouldn't be dominant in a payment market. If we want to make European economy competitive, we can't create such a legal framework that forces innovative startups to hire entire legal cabinets even at the beginning stage of their activity. Those startups are building future of the Europe, not lawyers, I would say. So I would say, paraphrasing a classic rock song, we don't need more regulations. However, I have to add a legal disclaimer, of course, except for those that are necessary.
Okay, great, Jerzy, thank you. Except for those that are necessary. So my third question will go to Ralf. Ralf, yes, so do we need some further regulatory measures, or perhaps we should rely on the market standardization more for the purpose of advancing open banking, right? Because open banking, PIS, AIS, these are, right, the most prominent issue, the cornerstone of the PSD2. Has the PSD2 achieved its goals with regard to those services? Could you please share with us your experiences on PIS, AIS, and then regulatory measures or market-driven standardization?
Okay, yeah, well, also from my side, thank you for having me here and the opportunity to express our views here as a TPP organization of Europe. So from a TPP's perspective, I think PSD2 has been, let's say, a mixed bag. It has been good for some countries and not so good in others. We have, in particular, there were quite a number of countries in Europe which were really closed prior to PSD2 coming into force. So a lot of Southern Europe, but also the UK, for example. So all of those had basically closed banking. But in other countries like Germany, Austria, Nordics, I think Poland as well, we had a rather open banking already. And from that perspective, it has been rather a step back. So some countries a step forward, in other countries, I think it has been a step back. And the reason is because there were three main objectives: security, increasing competition, and increasing innovation. And out of those three, I think only the increase of security has really worked out. And if anything, maybe even too much with all these SCAs left, right, and center. But most banks implemented minimal compliant APIs, and which are either not working well or not at all. So I think a lot of money and a lot of effort has gone to waste, and which has resulted in actually quite a long list of requirements that we have for PSD3 or the review of PSD2, what shall follow. And of course, we have participated in these stakeholder review that Jürgen had mentioned, and of course, we are feeding into the various consultation opportunities, such as the PSMEG group or the targeted consultation now. And so there is a long list that we are providing, but if I may start with what we think is the biggest problem, it is governance. Because what has been lacking was that focus on competition and innovation, which is not really surprising because the regulators, the European regulators, EBA, but also the national regulators, the national competent authorities in charge of PSD2, they do not have a mandate to drive competition or innovation. That's not really in their interest, and that's not what they have done, unfortunately. So we have had quite a hard time, actually, from a TPPs or fintechs perspective over the last 3-4 years. And therefore, I think that is what needs changing. And well, one could maybe add competition and innovation into the mandates of those regulators, but you know, it takes a while to change a mindset. So I think one of the if I look in the UK, where the competition authority had quite a decisive role, I think that might be a better way forward, and to have basically competition authorities included into the governance.
Okay, thank you. This is yeah. Jürgen, Ralf, this is an important remark. So perhaps we should involve also the competition authority, as it is the case for the UK's market. But you are saying that we have achieved objectives of the PSD2 with regard to security, to competition, innovation, perhaps not, but my question would be, is it because of the fact that APIs are not standardized and we need more standardization, and perhaps not on the level of legislation, but for instance on the level of this group where you are active, I mean the group under the auspices of the European Payments Council called now SEPA Payment Account Access, which transformed from the SEPA API Access working group at the EBC. So is it a good place to move forward? And with regard to competition, I would say that at least hasn't we witnessed this change of mindset because of the open banking, that we move somehow from a concept, when I talk about banks, ASPSPs, from the concept of banks as a castle to banking as a service, and the step towards this banking as a service are open banking services. So those two questions, could you go a bit in detail on that?
Okay, well, maybe starting with the last, then I think the banking is going a bit through the experience that the utilities had about what is it, 20 now almost longer years ago, like telecoms, electricity, railways. You know, there is basic infrastructure services and there's value-added services, and decoupling those two is important. And I think there are many banks have not yet understood that. They want to provide end-to-end services all by themselves. They do not see the value in having a split between whatever more basic fundamental infrastructure-based services and then allowing more competition on the service level, on the value-added service level. So that is where I hope that many more will move from the castle to the as a service idea. And the APIs they were providing, well, they were basically enforced. And so it's not really a surprise that they have not really come voluntarily and are not really done in the best way, in the best possible way. But it was not, the problem is not the standardization of the APIs, the problem are the APIs themselves. So what we need to standardize is the functionality that is provided. So we need a wide range of functionality. And that is where then this, you mentioned SEPA API group now called SPAS, SEPA Payment Account Access Scheme, that is being built by the EPC with the participation of banks and TPPs on an equal 50-50 basis, and of course all other stakeholders, merchants, consumers, etc. involved as well. That is to go beyond the basics of PSD2. So we have now found out what we can get for free, and I can tell you it's not enough. So we have to, going forward, I think, yes, we do have to fix a lot of problems with PSD2, but even if they were all fixed, and there is a long list I already mentioned, even if they were all fixed, we're still only there then at a level which is sort of the basics. If you want to compete, say in payments, with the currently dominant players, cards and wallets from the East and the West, then you have to be best in class. You have to provide the best possible. And for that, you do need collaboration. And there is a lot of functionality that has to come and that has to be provided for that. And that's where we need, say, premium APIs on top of the core of the core API, and that is what we are working at towards in this group. So from our experience, yes, we have going forward. I would also fully agree. We do not need more regulation. We need a more market-driven approach, but not to say that we still have to fix the basics also in this PSD2 review.
Yeah, well, thank you. The question is whether just for those basic PIS and AIS we have achieved what we wanted to achieve, but I would like to say that according to research studies, when people are asked about open banking, they also name instant payments, and we know that these instant payments are very important. Jürgen, could you tell us what can we expect here? So what steps next to make those instant payments normal? But please try to be concise, okay? So let's, gentlemen, let's keep time and please 2-3 minutes, Jürgen.
Yes, okay. Many thanks, Jakub. I could have say a few words on what Ralf and Jerzy just mentioned, or at least touch base, but I will focus on the instant payment and the file. It's different from the PSD2 and its review. It's a dedicated and a separate file here. Mentioned both files, PSD2 and instant payment, in our retail payment strategy. And it's one building block of this strategy. And here we are actually a bit more advanced than with the PSD2 and its review. We have in mind, and I can confirm that our intention is to put forward legislation on instant payments in Euro. After this year's summer break, there we will show up with a proposal. At least that is our intention. And this proposal, well, we have discussed the issues or the building blocks of this proposal also in various chances. For instance, in the PSMEG group, but also in other things. We have launched a public consultation early last year, and in the end we have let's say 4 main building blocks that we intend to address in this upcoming legislation. It is first the kind of a mandatory offering of instant payment by banks. There will be also issues addressed regarding the pricing. And a third building block will be more from the consumer protection side. How can errors and frauds prevention mechanisms work in this instant payment? And then a third building block is how to, let's say, deal with the sanctioning screening. So these four pillars or these four areas will be covered by the upcoming legislation. This is currently still subject to an impact assessment here internally, subject to our internal proceedings, and depending on the next steps, we are aiming for this goal with the aim to, let's say, various issues to facilitate the uptake of instant payments and various other issues to get a better or good consumer protection, but also to promote innovation and so on. So that is in a nutshell what I can say, not to disclose that much. So be keen on this, watch out in the second half of this year. So it is intended that we show up with a proposal, and that's from my side what I can say on this.
Yes, and I think it is a worthwhile information for the audience, for the public, so we can expect such a legislation and take a look. Without a regulatory approach here, we could wait for instant payments to be rolled out for years, yes? And now we can expect that it will go sooner. And Ralf, I think you would be satisfied if those instant payments become mandatory. Yeah, wouldn't you?
Hang on, sorry for that.
We'll have another panel speaker, Ralf.
Yeah, no, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So just a quick comment. And,
yes. Sorry.
Mandatory
yes,
payments for
and of course, yeah. Well, we have been, let's say, lobbying for making instant payments mandatory now for a couple of years and for various reasons, but also because it will make the life and the viability of payment initiation services, PIS, much easier. So we have a lot of restrictions in the APIs, and one of which we had prior to PSD2. One of the biggest problems we now have is that PISPs were not allowed to look at the account prior to initiate a payment. So you're initiating into the dark. You don't know if the execution will happen or not, and that is creating a lot of problems. And with instant payments, that will change, because then you will not have much of a delay between the initiation and the execution. So that is a big step forward, a big enabler, and we will see, I think, many more PISPs than in the market than we have today. But it's not just about making it mandatory; it's also about how to make it mandatory. Jürgen already mentioned the pillars there, and let me just mention a few or our views on some of them. Well, firstly, I think it's important to understand that we're talking mainly about outgoing SETs, making SETs. So it's the payers, everyone in Europe being able to make a payment. It's not just about incoming, as the SET's rulebook is looking at, which is about reachability. So therefore, it must be the outgoing part is what really needs mandating. And the other thing is, it has to be free to the payer. Now, there might be some way of banks recovering their cost, of course, but as a payment method in retail payments, it can only ever work if it is free to the payer from a per transaction basis. So there cannot be any transaction fees for the payer, otherwise they wouldn't use it. They would rather use some free alternatives. And another important point is that we keep the finality to the payee. We're talking about credit transfers here, which there should not be anything like chargebacks or like a legacy what we had in the card world, which is not really required, because here we're talking about push payments, which are fundamentally different and have a lot of advantages versus the pool payments of cards or
exactly.
debit.
And I really appreciate, ladies and gentlemen, that Ralf is saying this, because he mentioned all the building blocks Jürgen mentioned before. And consumers want free of charge instant payments. Those perhaps it would be, in terms of sequencing, it would be the best option to go single step for outgoing and incoming instant payments. We are still talking about instant payments. This legislation is about SCT Inst and euro payments. BLIK is also for zlotys. So because we are running out of time, however, due to those technical issues, I think we can add a few minutes. But with regard to Polish instant payments, I will merge two questions. So could you please, Jerzy, say us how fast instant payments develop at BLIK, and whether you think it is better to make such domestic systems such as BLIK, Bizum, Twint, Mobile Pay interoperable, so bottom up or top down as a EPI initiative? What's your take on that?
Oh, thank you, Jakub, for your question. I would like to add something to this discussion. In Poland, there are no regulations according to which instant payments would be mandatory. And in our system in BLIK, we can observe increasing popularity of those payments. I will bring up some figures. In 2020, BLIK users made 45 million instant BLIK mobile phone transfers. In 2021, there were over 115 million of these transfers. The year-on-year increase is 158%. I can add that the first quarter of 2022 we already recorded 44 million such P2P instant transactions. So I think that it proves that regulations are not required when we have a good product which meets clients' expectations. So maybe it is a controversial statement, but I am supported by our figures, the facts. Regarding to your question, Jakub, it should be analyzed. Is there a place, a demand for European instant payments? We have a Polish market which is focused on our domestic transfers, and our clients are not asking for introducing product which could allow them making payments abroad.
Okay, but we are talking about single euro payments area. Please remember, Jerzy,
we are
that
outside of this.
and there are more and more cross-border payments, and I think there is a need already identified, as well as we are seeing this as for regular credit transfers. Now is the same situation for instant credit transfers, that adoption for euro such payments, instant credit transfers, is not that fast. Therefore, perhaps this regulation could be beneficial. But this is another thing. What you are saying, do we need more than domestic payments? But it would be great to make these payments work on the basis where a Bizum payer from Spain could transfer money to Poland. Yes, and to make and the BLIK payer could transfer money to Bizum, and even Yes.
You are talking about
be accepted. Interoperability, exactly.
Yes. So I think that IMPSE, it is a very good idea for building such a pan-European system. And it is a great, excellent example of European integration in payments services. So I think that top-down action designed as an idea could distort competition. I think that pan-European systems should be built from the foundations. So right direction, in my opinion, it is building such structures from bottom to up.
Okay, bottom up. Ralf, bottom up or top down? Shortly, please.
Well, from my
Doesn't
perspective, yeah, no, we have just, there is this initiative already going between these national mobile payment schemes, interacting and like roaming, etc. What you mentioned, this is what EMSA is all about. And there is others like EPI, I think, trying to build new infrastructure. But from our perspective, we just spent 5 years and many millions, if not billions, implementing infrastructure based on PSD2, all these APIs. That can be and must be the basis. It allows us to reach basically everyone in Europe. 90% plus, 95% of people in Europe have bank accounts and can make payments now. All it needs is to make these infrastructure really work. So make these APIs improved and maybe complemented with, as I said, with like the SPA premium extensions, and then in combination with instant payments, we've got to minimize the friction in the user experience, you know, the SCA process, etc. And then we are there. So we would have a European-wide, reaching 400 million people payment system there that we can control ourselves and which would be purely European.
Jürgen, do you like this vision that open banking, PIS, instant payments, and we are there and with the bottom-up approach? Or perhaps you would defend the EPI initiative? We won't have our European champions. We want to have a pan-European brand, don't we?
Well, that's how to complement or supplement to this. Well, I'm coming from a regulatory perspective, so to say, and we are, let's say, in favor of or supportive that there are market initiatives and solutions showing up by market actors, and basically. How they are designed, it's up to the market. We as regulators, we provide, so to say, the rails, but the train on these rails must be provided by the market. And I think our current legislation, PSD2 in particular, although it is currently in a review process, it is overall well developed. What Ralf said, it break up the market, so to say, and provided something that is from the beginning. Well, it was painful or difficult to implement, but in an overall view, it worked. But now we are here, and we need to, let's say, further develop the regulatory framework. I just mentioned the instant payment. I think this will give a further boost to pan-European payment solutions. And well, we haven't touched on the open finance framework and the policy work on this, but here we have a further work stream to further advance and further, let's say, prepare the rails. And then it's in the end up to the market to develop products and to do the, let's say, the competition to get as much as customers as possible for the solution. So that's from my perspective what I can contribute.
Great. I think that those all messages coming from our panel speakers complement each other. So I will sum up our discussion. I share and encourage all of you to take part in the public consultation and have your say on the PSD2 review. How far it will go, whether the European Commission will decide to completely change or just to fine-tune will be decided when information from the market is gathered. I think that everybody in the panel is in favor of competition, of just such a regulation that is fit for purpose. And actually PSD2 did a good job. Maybe not so much changes are needed to this piece of legislation. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I hope that Jürgen and Ralf, you will join us in Warsaw next year, but on site, not remotely. So thank you. We are in touch with regard to the Commission's work. Jerzy, also, thank you very much to be right here with me. And,
thank you.
And,
thank you.
Gentlemen and the audience, thank you as well for
your patience.
For your patience as well, but we are almost on time, I think.
And thank you very much for moderating this panel, Professor.
Thank you.